Okay, cool. So today I got Adam Petway, my boss, my mentor, a friend, and I got Jeff Petersmeyer, who just got assistant coach of the year. So, uh, Jeff, can you like introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Petersmeyer. I'm the jumps coach. The award you're talking about was regional assistant coach of the year for the men. Um, but yeah, I coach jumps and multis here at USC, finishing my first year.
Cool, cool. Adam, like, can you like introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name's Adam Petway. I'm currently a professor in the Department of Engineering at Mississippi State University. And I've worked at pretty much every level of basketball, starting in high school all the way up to the NBA. And I was fortunate enough to be around the performance guy all of last year. So that was a great collaboration. And it's really an honor to be on the podcast again.
So, uh, first thing, I know you guys are really close, but like, how do you know each other? Jeff, can you get this one?
Yeah, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. I was on one of my many Thailand vacations. I think it was Thailand, right? And I got an
Thailand.
email from Adam when we both worked at Louisville to meet up and just kind of exchange ideas, and so we did. And then I left track and field in September of 22 and went to join the basketball program there at Louisville as a speed and power consultant. And it was great. It was awesome, and we got to hang out and just go to practice and exchange ideas, and we became buddies, and we've been talking ever since, professionally, and it's been great.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jeff's one of my best friends at this point in life. And, we talk pretty much every day on various topics, speed power related, weight room related. Really, when I kind of perused through his background and saw he worked for a guy named Ed Jacoby at Boise State, I was like, man, I got to get in contact with this guy. And then when he came down to my office, we both found out that probably one of our biggest influences on our careers, Coach Boo, who you've had on the podcast a lot, Eric. So it's just been a great partnership, and I've learned so much from Jeff over these last 2.5 years, and it's just been really, really a pleasure getting to know him.
Nice, nice. So, um, I want to start by like asking Jeff, like, it's your first year at USC, and how do you get like good success in the first year?
Well, I think it's just the one, we have talented athletes. That always helps your resume. And so the previous coach and the coaching staff here, um, it was well stocked. I didn't just come in and lights out coaching nobodies. I mean, we had some very talented athletes here, and so I just brought my programming and my structure, which, like Adam said, very close to our mutual friend Boo, and implemented that, and we had good success, and they performed really well. So, very, very pleased with the student athletes we had here training with me, and we got some good ones coming in, I think, too.
Nice, nice. So, um, uh, I want to ask this because like I'm more like not gonna say interest, but like I'm more familiar with just speed. I'm not very familiar with jumping, but like how important is like acceleration or max velocity sprinting mechanic on like jumping?
Well, let's talk long jump. We
Yeah.
had a guy who ran well last year as a freshman, jumped far, JC Stevenson. And my goal when I got here was I'm gonna make this dude so fast. I mean, we were doing block work probably. I took the year off from coaching track, so I was maybe a little bit early starting uh, block work, but I was just so excited because he accelerates so well. And so, uh, next thing you know, we're in indoor season and the guy's PRing left and right in the 60. And it's really a ton of acceleration work. He's young, so I think training age has a lot to do with that. Time of year, of course, is really important as to how many days a week we can train acceleration when you have a meet, when you don't. And he just blossomed. He ran 10:13 at the Pac-12 championships in the 100-meter dash. Um, he won the NCAA championships in the long jump, and a lot of that is he's the fastest guy on the runway. And so it's critically important to me. And going to the triple jump and the high jump, it's very important. But when talking about the long jump, as fast as controllable speed was faster than I think most people, and doing a lot of acceleration development, and that being our meat and potatoes, or our base, as you will, really helped.
Cool, cool. Um, Adam, I want to ask you this because besides a strength and conditioning coach, you're also a biomechanist, and at the same time, you also help Jeff program their weight room training. So, what are your thoughts on like how like or how important is like sprinting mechanic on like long jump?
Yeah, like Jeff alluded to, I think it's very important. So, your fastest athletes, as long as they can, convert at the board, are typically going to be your best horizontal jumpers, right? So, I think building peak velocity, increasing, Vmax or max velocity also increases Amax, that relationship known as tau. So I think, yeah, so improving max velocity will typically, in most athletes, improve acceleration, right? So if you can kind of move that curve up and to the right, you're going to be dealing with more of like a robust type of athlete, right? Where I think the interplay between the mechanics and what I've had the opportunity to collaborate on Jeff with, Jeff's always sending me film and video, and it's been an awesome partnership. Just being able to collaborate, just kind of break down. I've learned so much that's helped me in my prism from like a weight room perspective by just communicating and collaborating with Jeff on acceleration runway mechanics, or just running the curve and the high jump and things of this nature. And he also coaches multis as well. So just learning new events has made me better in my thought process of what neural and general days look like, polarization of training, what maybe my general circuits might look like from a individualized perspective based on some deficiencies within mechanics. So I think the partnership has been really good from that perspective. But performance guy, to answer your question, I do think that relationship between velocity and max velocity and acceleration, or the rate of change of velocity, is very important. And if you increase Vmax, right, you're going to subsequently improve your acceleration, right? So the fact that Jeff does work on block starts, I almost look at it, and Dan spoke on this a little bit. Dan Paff, when we were in Italy, is all of his horizontal jumpers and long jumpers will do block starts regardless if they do the 60, 100, whatever. Even if they're not sprinters, just because he views that as almost over speed training, right? Because if they're hitting max velocity, again, that's going to help their acceleration mechanics on runway. So I do think that is paramount.
Cool, cool. So, like three of us all influenced by Coach Boo and the three three stages of neuromuscular fatigue. So we all kind of know that like if we get into like the first stage of neuromuscular fatigue, they kind of lose their like mechanic. So what happens if like during the season you saw like they kind of lose the maybe their like mechanic getting worse? Do you still work on that like during the indoor season or outdoor season, Jeff?
Well, it could be for a variety of reasons, right? If they're overtrained, obviously we need to potentially back down on the volume, have more density, um, less volume, things like that. I mean, there's also times where they just forget. And so I think in the fall, we're talking limb movements. We're cueing differently than we're cueing in the spring. But for example, I have a couple Paralympians that have an arm impingement, and sometimes they just forget that they need to stroke their arms. And so a subtle reminder in season, clicks a lot easier than maybe we're teaching so much in the fall. And so same thing with JC. We were doing acceleration runs this week. We're getting ready for the Olympic trials. And we're not focusing so much on limb movements at this point in time, but one subtle reminder, and he was hitting so much better. Just in the fall, I'm a new coach. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. So it's a little bit more teaching based. So yeah, for a variety of reasons, we do have to implement and use tools in our toolbox.
Cool, cool. So, like I know Adam kind of like besides working with basketball, like he basically worked with all sports. So, and I personally learned a lot with how he programmed the weight room for like basketball and track. So, Adam, can you talk a little bit about like when you help Jeff do the program for weight room, like what do you see the main difference or like the demand for like track and basketball? What's the main difference, and how do you do the program for track?
Well, hey, the first and foremost is that Jeff's such a smart, competent coach that I think finding menu items that are compatible with what he's doing on the track is the most important thing. So he's kind of guiding that, and it's really awesome because you can kind of consolidate stressors and have thematics for the day and what you're trying to accomplish that day, the week in the microcycle, but also phase thematics within the mesocycle. So, last summer we kind of sat down with Coach Boo and just kind of chalked out, just overarching thematics and adaptations we were trying to accomplish during, certain times of the year. And I had just a rough draft, and Boo kind of picked it apart a little bit, which was awesome. That was such a fun growth experience for me, just as a coach. But really, it's just communicating with Jeff. Okay, if he's doing block starts and overspeed training with his jumpers, well, large amplitudes of movement typically are going to couple well with his block start days, right? So what are we doing? We're doing full Olympics, and if we're in like pre-comp or right at the early season, doing some segmental flexion work, like some sort of squatting variation, right, with large amplitude. Well, I know Jeff, in his short approach, we'll do maybe some hang cleans or some hang snatches, right? Some shorter amplitudes at higher velocities. And then maybe in the preseason, if Jeff's doing like a speed endurance day or some sort of capacity type training, I might do a little bit more volume or even maybe like a lactate circuit towards the end of the microcycle. So really, it's communicating with Jeff and just seeing what he wants out of that day, and then what stimulus can I provide in the weight room that's compatible, that's not going to take away from what he's doing on the track and facilitate some potentiation. So we kind of built up just based on Coach Boo's recommendations to progressively overloading compound movements in that little transition period at the end of the fall semester. We hit some pretty good numbers based on some 1RMs, and the kids in the group felt pretty strong. And then we kind of phased out a lot of the static lists and mainly went lighter Olympic and Olympic variations and a lot of ballistics going in to that kind of transition between indoor and outdoor, in the spring semester. And one brilliant thing that Jeff brought to the table as like a neural stimulus is some just catch pin concentric squats. 85 to 90%, 3 sets of three, like 10 days out. I believe he got it from Ed Jacoby, but that was really a neural priming stimulus. And Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit more about that going into, outdoor nationals, that I really felt like something that we kind of, phased out because, we didn't want to blunt elasticity, but we kind of brought a minimal effective dose going, 10 days prior to some of the more important competitions, and had some pretty good success with it. So Jeff can kind of talk a little bit more about the neural priming effect, but it's really just communicating with Jeff. He's such a competent, really great coach that, what menu items can I provide that are compatible based on the thematics of the day and the week and the month, where it's not going to take away from whatever training he has on the track, on the pit, on the runway, so it's really just finding compatible menu items for what you're trying to accomplish.
Cool. Jeff, can you talk a little bit about like the neural priming stuff?
Well, yeah, but I'll backtrack a little bit before. When I started working with Adam, I'd taken Boo's strength and conditioning certification. I'd been doing a lot of Dan Paff stuff, Ed Jacoby stuff, Petros stuff, and Stu McMillan stuff. And then when I was, and I made it my own eventually, but then I worked with Adam, And I'm like, this is it. That's it. Like, and it really fit well with. I love Dan's coinage of minimum effective dose, and I think a lot of people come to my practice and they're like, "That's it. That's all you did today. That's it. Really?" And then we go to the weight room, and then basically Adam's cutting my volume in half, and I'm like, "This is great." We got the 8 hour rule in the fall. We're not in the weight room that much, but they're lifting a lot. The intensity is high. It was fantastic. In relation to the quarter squats, catch pin squats, Ed Jacoby 10 days out. We don't squat during the season, okay? But 10 days out, uh, he would do 3 sets of 1 to 2 reps of 90% quarter squats. And so one day I was in Boise, Idaho. I think this was 2 years ago. Uh, it was me and Boo, Brian Stith, one of my close friends who coaches in Idaho, jumps coach, and Ed Jacoby. And we're sitting around dinner table, and I brought up, "Hey, Boo, what do you think about doing quarter squats 10 days out? That Ed does." And he had a really great story about how Dan told him at a championship meet, and I hate to butcher this story for Boo, but your jumper's too frisky. Like his movements were all over the place. He's too frisky. You got to squat him. And so Boo did more of like Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like 3 sets of three or four. Is that right? Reps.
Yeah,
And so that's
I think it was 3 by 3 at 85, if I remember correctly.
yeah. So
85%.
very
Yep.
similar, very
Yeah.
similar. And I do believe that female athletes do better with a little bit more volume on those rather than singles and doubles. And so before the NCAA meet, we can get into weight rooms, but I have this Max Pro that Shaq uses. It's $1,000 that I use myself, and I just packed it in my backpack and I brought it to the hotel, and we're in the hotel gym that just has dumbbells and med balls, and we're sitting there doing 85-90% squats, bottom up squats on this really portable unit that does 300 lifts, but I brought it just to do the squats. And so there we are in the weight room 2 days before the NCAA championship long jump, and JC's doing these squats on this weird looking machine, and people are walking into the hotel gym going, "What the heck is going on?" So but no, it worked. It was great. So happy we did it.
Cool. So, Adam, can you talk a little bit about like Jeff don't do squats during the season? I know like Coach Wu kind of like influenced us on this kind of like this idea, this thought, but like, can you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So you know, strength is underpinning quality as it relates to performance in certain aspects, right? So there's, max strength, like your absolute strength, and there's, relative strength. That's strength relative to your body mass, or strength required relative to the demands of the sporting activity, right? So once you get strong up to a certain point, strength no longer increases like speed, right? I think we can all agree on that up to a certain point. So what we do know is there's like kind of what Coach Boo would call proprioceptive supercompensation, right? So at certain times, right, when you squat or have a heavy static lift type of day, it's going to blunt the proprioceptors, and that is going to limit a lot of your elastic qualities during training. Well, during the season, if you blunt your proprioceptors up to 10 to 17 days, that's 2.5 weeks of your training right there. So when you have to run fast and when you have to jump high, to jump long, um, you know, uh, phasing out static lifts is something that's somewhat necessary within high level speed power and in basketball to a certain degree uh, to maintain elastic qualities, right? Because in speed power sports, and basketball it certainly is a speed power sport, lifting statically at a high intensity is going to have a transient effect on your elastic qualities and your proprioceptors, right? So I do think that the main mistakes I see, particularly within team sports of basketball, is you're lifting static lifts, not intense enough, right? And doing it too frequently. So if you can get your athletes strong in the preseason and in the off season and have it build up, they can maintain strength by just doing their sport, particularly in speed power. Because think about it, you know, in the transition to the first to second phase in the triple jump, you know, James Hay modeled out a lot of, you know, biomechanical models that suggest that these athletes are producing greater than, you know, 10 times body weight ground reaction forces on a single leg, right? So there's really nothing in the weight room you can do to replicate that. And Jeff always tells a story, which I think is brilliant, is phasing out the squats going in. You know, you get strong, right? So your athletes are squatting, they're deadlifting, they're gonna get, you know, do their heavy Olympics, and all their static lifting building up to a certain point. But once you're strong, there's actually a point of diminished return by adding static strength and absolute strength qualities to an athlete that's already strong, right? So, you know, Jeff told me early in our relationship, he said, you know, hey, Adam, let's phase out. Or previously, I phased out a lot of my squats, right, going into after the winter semester. Then we would pick it up again, and not only was there not a drop off, but a lot of the athletes actually squatted more, right? So what does that tell you, right? You can maintain those qualities if done correctly and programmed correctly. I think the two is taking that out of context to say strength's not important. You know, getting stronger makes you slow. No, doing it too frequently and not being strong enough are the two qualities that you'll see that will blunt speed power qualities, right? So I think if you can get them extremely strong and increase absolute strength levels up to a certain point in your off season and preseason, then if they're already strong enough relative to the demands of the sport, you don't have to keep revisiting those qualities with a high rate of frequency, right? So phase it out, work on some light Olympics, work on ballistics, work on some of you know, your biochemical type circuits, your general strength circuits, and let the sport kind of dictate the primary stimulus and speed power events that are going to kind of guide and dictate, you know, elastic qualities and things that are environmentally important for running fast, jumping high, jumping long. And all of those qualities are very important. They are the sport in track and field, but they are also very, very important in the sport of basketball as well. So again, the mistakes I typically see is either not getting them strong enough in the preseason or just continually to do moderate intensity static lifting with a high rate of frequency
Nice,
in the
nice,
competitive.
nice, nice. I like it. I like it. So, uh, next part of the podcast, I want to talk a little bit about like load management or handling the volume for track. Like you mentioned, Jeff, like you say when people like saw you coach, they're gonna ask, "That's it." So can you sh I know it depends, but like can you share a little bit about how much is it like the volume for like each session, like preseason and indoor season or outdoor season?
Well, I again, it has to depend time of the year, training age of the athlete, skill level of the athlete. Um, for example, though, like if how many times we're touching on acceleration development, since we were talking about acceleration. So, uh, I mean, the volume just depends on many things. It's hard to answer that specifically, but when you look at the overall meters of an acceleration day, for example, it might go up throughout the year, but recovery weeks I'll cut in half, and then it seems like it's really easy. But we're also playing with intensity, frequency, specificity, variation of what we're doing. So there's many components at play with volume, but I am a low volume coach. But the older they get, maybe instead of doing 3 times 20, 3 times 30, 3 times 40, maybe they're up to 5 times that on their acceleration runs, 5 times 20, 30, and 40. And you know, injury also takes takes a little bit to consider when you're planning that out too. And I always believe that we're jumping off of what we did last week. So, for example, this coming week's volume is going to be extremely low going into the Olympic trials. And then I'll hit them when we're in Eugene on Monday and Tuesday, or we leave Wednesday. So when we're in Eugene later in the week, the intensity is going to be high and the volume might be a little bit more than it was last week. And some people might look at that and flip it the other way around, but that's just how I tend to program things. I know that's a vague answer to your question, but I mean, it really, speed variation, specificity, volume, intensity, it all kind of comes into play when you're programming things like that.
Yeah. So, uh, and I want to know your thoughts on like helping Jeff doing the weight room programming. Like, how do you match the intensity or like the volume like in each week or each day?
Well, I think, Jeff kind of hit it on the head. Is like, I think both him and minimum effective dose type coaches, but I do think, volume is kind of the fabric in the culture of basketball, right? So from a basketball standpoint, like it's already very self-evident that no basketball athlete is under volumized. I think where Jeff and I have great synergy as it relates to track and field is again just what 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 are you trying to accomplish on the track and how can I facilitate that and make it compatible from a thematic standpoint in the weight room, right? So I don't think it's like a lot of people within team sports have this misconception of what load management is, or they get the management part really well, but they don't get the loading, the first aspect, really well. Like Tim Gavitt says, train smarter and harder, right? So I think a lot of team sport practitioners, from a sports science standpoint and from a sports performance standpoint, might underload and overmanage. The great thing about Jeff is Jeff kind of has control over both aspects, right? So Jeff, from the technical standpoint, but also technical, is like manipulating all the volume and intensity. So really, I'm just playing off of what he does, right, and just making sure again, if he's doing block starts, I know a lot of amplitude and large ranges of motion really compatible. All right. If he's doing like short approach work and acceleration, I know probably shorter ranges of motion, but at high velocities is really going to be compatible. If he's doing more speed endurance or voluminous type work, I know there's going to be a certain biochemical effect that we want to elicit in the weight room. It's probably going to be towards the end of a microcycle, and it's something that we'll probably do towards the end of the training week, right? For restorative purposes. So I think being aligned with your phase thematics for the day, the week, the month, and the year, really important. Weight room and on the track, but also just being polarized in your training. I know, Jeff's not one that's going to do block starts on Monday, approach work on Tuesday, acceleration work on Wednesday, speed endurance work on Thursday. Like he's going to couple days that are high neural, right? Acceleration, short approach, block start with more general stuff, bodybuilding circuits, a lot of really good like restorative type work. His menu items and his selection is just very robust. So it's easy for me to just be like, okay, just plug and play. Like, what days does he want to go very neural, and how can I facilitate that in the weight room? And what days does he want to be really general, and how can I facilitate that? And yeah, so it's really just coupled very, very well from that perspective. But I think Jeff's super competent, and I think both of our philosophies align with just minimum effective dose. But dosing, you have to be very targeted and you have to be very deliberate with the dose you apply. Not to say we never do anything or lift at a high intensity or we never provide a stimulus. I mean, it's like Jeff said, like, the kid that won the long jump 2 days before was doing, 90% in the hotel room, so it's like, it's not like you're never loading. It's just you're very calculated and very deliberate in how you load.
Cool.
It's
Cool.
funny about the quarter squats is that they hadn't squatted for so long that they were
Yeah.
really excited to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
they got really excited, and the feedback from the weight room, kids are going to be sore. Kids are going to be sore, but um, sore at the right time is crucial. And I'd go to the weight room and just ask them, how do you like the weight room this year? And 99% of the time they loved it. There's going to be days where they're like, man, that was a lot. Well, yeah, that was a lot. But there's also days on the track where we're going to jump. And in the past, I've had great strength coaches, I have no complaints, but there's been days in the past where, coach, I can't jump today. What do you mean? Like, we did heavy RDLs yesterday, and I'm like, dang it, I told them I didn't want to, and with Adam, it's just been awesome. Like I haven't missed a jump day because of something we did in the weight room, and that's great. When you have to punt a day of long jump or triple jump because the weight room did something that you just didn't want to happen, you got the response that you didn't want, like my hamstrings are shot, and sometimes that happens, but for the most part, this year was fantastic working with Adam.
Nice, nice. This is also one thing I learned from Adam the past year is like Adam knows when to back off on some stuff, when to like load, when not to, and focusing on the sport. So Adam, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I work with different coaches, I work with different strength coaches. I know sometimes like what just said happened like because like the weight room did something so they can't do something on the other day. So can you talk a little bit about your thought process on this?
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to just being observant in your environment, right? Like I said, volume is caked into the fabric of the culture of basketball, right? No basketball athlete, it's never a limiting factor in basketball being under volume. That's just not like based on the culture of basketball, that's just not really a thing. So again, I'd rather be right. I'd rather be undertrained, right, than overtrained. Meaning, like you can always just add more, right? So you can always just provide more of a stimulus in your environment, which is as an SNC the weight room. But like as soon as overtraining creeps in, um, like it's just going to take that much longer to kind of get out of that residual fatigue, right? So I do think I do think it really is just comes down to being very observant in your environment and just knowing the athletes. Like Jeff mentioned, female athletes can handle a little bit more volume. Um, you know, your low power output kids can also handle more frequency, right? So your studs, man, like your guys that are producing and girls that are producing a lot of power output. Well, due to that, the residual time to recover from that output is going to be greater. So your Ferraris, man, you might want to only take them out on the track, and not the track in the sense of like a track, but like you might want to only take the Ferrari out on the highway maybe once or twice a week, right? But your Ford F-150, you can drive it through the mud every day. And that may be a poor analogy as far as it relates to training, but something that you always want to think about, right? Like your studs. Some days you got to keep them in the garage, right? And maybe that's the general circuit, maybe that's a bodybuilding circuit, lactate circuit, maybe that's some myofascial release, Eldoa, soft tissue manipulation, taper work, right? But if they can get 110, 115, 120 miles per hour, like it's going to take longer to recover, right? That's a lot of wear and tear on the tires, the shots, the tread, and the engine, the carburetor, exhaust. So again, it's going to take them longer to recover. So I really think it's just knowing the individual athlete, knowing how to manipulate volume and intensity, and just kind of watching what's going on, right? Like you'll know like the normative movement strategies for an athlete when they start deviating from their norms, and you might need to intervene by changing what you're doing in the weight room. And it may only be like one or two lifts or one or two sessions, but you always just have to be adaptable in your environment. And like you and I last year came in an environment, we had to be extremely adaptable, right? Sometimes our lift days turn to a circuit day.
Yeah.
Sometimes our circuit day turned into just soft tissue and
Yeah.
fascial stretching. So
Yeah.
so again, like you gotta be listen.
So you're saying being adaptable around the environment right?
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to just knowing your athletes, knowing the staff and what the expectation is, and just being adaptable in the environment, right? So
Yeah.
if you know like the movement strategies of your athletes and the normative strategies at which they function on a day to day, and you start to see a deviation from those norms, then maybe you need to intervene and change, one or two sessions. It's like it never be afraid to punt. I think certain coaches, certain strength coaches are like, "No, I wrote it on my sheet 3 months ago, so we got to stick with what's on the sheet." And I've never felt like that's a good way to operate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing, also another thing I learned from Adam, and like that when I come back to Taiwan, like that really helps me a lot, and my athlete likes it, is the circuit. So, can you tell me, like, Adam, can you share with me, like, where did the circuit come from, and like, how did you implement the circuit, like, day by day, and how do you do it to help Jeff?
Yeah, no, this is a great segue. Actually, so we were lucky enough in uh, our conference, our symposium last month in Milan to have Dan Path, and it was great. I have a notebook filled of notes just from dinners and conversations with him. And I learned lactate circuits, general strength circuits, bodybuilding circuits from Coach Boo, who learned it from Dan Path. So it was good to hear from the source. I said, Coach, like, uh, where did you get this from? And he said, well, I was just studying as a young coach, and I came upon some East German literature and periodization and some Slovenian uh, literature and periodization from like the 50s and 60s. So they would use circuits in the preseason, which made sense to me, right? Like it's general, it's building capacity, et cetera, et cetera. But then he was like, well, they would reintroduce them like close to the end of the season. And he was just like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not high neural. It's really not a lot of power output. What's going on? Well, it's the biochemical response, right? So it's transient upregulation and androgen, the accumulation of lactate for, growth hormone, testosterone, all that good anabolic environment. If you manipulate certain volumes and certain intensities and do it in a very dense manner, like you can get really, really good biochemical response, right? So it's cool to hear that. Is like, he reached out to the East Germans and Slovenian coaches based on what he saw. Is like, well, why would they implement it early in the season? It makes sense, right? Because it's general physical preparation. But they picked it back up later in the season, and it was all just biochemically related, right? So to me, that makes sense. And again, um, Jeff has a great menu of circuits. Like and it phases well with what's the thematics for the day, the week, the month. So a lot of that is from Coach Boo, but essentially a lot of the general strength circuits you saw were single joint exercises that are ancillary in nature. A lot of variability, right? So a lot of different types of lunging patterns, curl to press, different step ups, leg extension, leg curl, rows, things that are ancillary in nature. Just throw them in your circuit, right? I think as Coach says, you can either be fancy or you can be heavy and intense, but you can't be both, right? So on your high neural days, lift, right? Sprint or accelerate, do jumps and plyos, right? Maybe you do some multiple throws depending on what time of the year it is, and just kind of keep it moving. On your general days, like if you believe in triplanar movement or fascial type movement or whatever it is, just make it more on your general days and have the thematic for that day to be more restorative to set you up for your high neural days later in microcycle, right? So I think these circuits can be valuable tools for restoration. I think these circuits can be valuable tools for movement competency, right? Triangulation, triplanar movement, moving in three-dimensional time and space. So I think having a robust menu item for different types of circuits, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, is really important. But I do know, they facilitate an environment of restoration, and they really set up well within the training week to set you up where your high days can be really high, and then your circuit days can be more general and facilitate recovery to set you up when you need to lift intense, when you need to lift at a high velocity, when you need to accelerate, run fast. So those high neural demands, like if you have a really robust menu item for your general days, it just kind of makes the high and low, or the neural in general, just that much more compatible.
Nice. Nice. So, Jeff, can you talk a little bit about like the the circuit?
Well, I've stolen from some of the best. I've stolen from Dan, stolen from Boo, stolen from Jacoby. Uh, uh, I've stolen from a lot of people, and I think in a more simplistic way, what he's saying is, when I started here, they're dedicated athletes, but they do not like to do circuits. Okay. And so early in the year, we'd have our jump session on a Tuesday, and then we'd have two general strength circuits following. And as a coach, you're out there working with many athletes, and you look and somebody's just gone. Like, where'd they go? They didn't do the circuit, right? And they didn't like it because it's not easy. It's not like sprinting 150s, but it's not easy. But as the year went on, they never skipped it because they knew that they would feel better the next day. And so it'd make them sore and tired, but it gave them the endocrine support, and they just felt great the next day. And so they never skipped after that. So once you built that culture, which took a few weeks, and it's great. They don't question it anymore. But to do a circuit where you're doing, things that are difficult, where you're doing wrestler's bridge and things like that nobody likes to do, they like to do it now because they know it's going to make them feel good.
Cool, cool. Nice. So, this is personally my personal question. What do you guys talk about? You guys always are on the phone. You do you guys talk about like assassination? Do you guys talk about like really talk about training or just like anything?
Uh,
Jeff is just this pizza assassination.
well, we talk about food, but before Adam logged in on the call, I was telling Eric that Boo's texted me about the Kennedy assassination. We talk about all kinds of stuff, but yeah, Boo and I were talking about um, we're actually, the three of us, going to do a weekend in New Orleans, and Boo's going to take us on a JFK assassination tour as it
Really?
relates to New Orleans. We all know it happened in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, but Lee Harvey Oswald spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and you have the ONI, Naval Intelligence, CIA, FBI, everything down there in New Orleans. So we talk about assassinations, we talk about food, sports, you name it. We have a great time. But yeah, we
Seinfeld
we talk.
references, a lot of Seinfeld references,
I
performance
mean, yeah,
guy.
yeah, you have to do Seinfeld references. So yeah.
Hey,
Cool.
one thing people should know about Jeff is he's an expert pizza maker. Not
Oh,
only in margarita pizza, like he makes his own dough, New York style pizza. Like some of the best pizza I've ever had is from Jeff's kitchen.
I was just saying like he should just do a PhD on pizza.
I should teach a PhD on pizza. That's
Okay, 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 okay.
yeah. But the best compliment ever was when Gio came over to my house and I made him a margarita pizza in my outdoor oven. And Adam, what did he say? It's like just like back home. So
He said it's authentic and it's the best pizza he's had in America. So,
Okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
and you're the connoisseur of all food related, particularly when it comes to pizza and pasta.
Cool,
yeah.
cool. So, I know like Jeff, you just won the regional like assistant coach of the year, and Adam like you got a new paper just launched, and like people in Taiwan love that paper. Can you talk a little bit about that paper? Because people love that.
Oh, hey, the force play paper.
Yeah, it's big
Yeah.
hit in Taiwan, bro.
Oh, great. That's great feedback. Yeah. So it stemmed from here. And we're just kind of kicking around and mulling around. As you know, we had a great partnership with Hawkins Dynamic. They do a great job. So Drake Berger is a good friend. And he was kind of spearheading and leading this project, but also Carabelle did an unbelievable job. And we were just like, hey, what underpinning qualities from a neuromuscular standpoint or force plate assessment standpoint does the average college basketball athlete look like, right? What average point guard compared to shooting guard, compared to forward, compared to center, right? Because we're just kind of like, hey, is there anything out there that has normative values based on position for elite college basketball, like Power Five, best of the best? So we had these weekly calls, and we come up with innovation initiatives is what we called them, and because we were trying to be innovative and really trying to build like our brand as being progressive and forward thinking. So we were just like, hey, is there anything out there looking at like normatives? And kicked around and mulled around a couple of ideas, but what we ended up uh, just to be standardized and repeatable, Carabelle was going to go on site and test counter movement jump and rebound jump after a standardized warm up for 8 different Power Five Division One men's basketball teams, right? So in that, it was us, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Purdue, who else? Alabama. So 2 out of the 4 Final Four teams in the NCAA championships were in the study. So it was elite level athletes that a lot of the kids that are going to get drafted next week in the NBA draft were in this study, right? So I think it ended up being 96 different athletes from multiple Power Five schools. And Drake did an awesome job with the statistical analysis and writing the manuscript. I helped him edit it a little bit along with John McMahon from the UK, who does a great job. And then Carabella really just packed up our force plate and just drove on campus to all of these different schools, took them through the warm up, made sure it was standardized and repeatable in how she was collecting the data, and then it was all exported to the cloud in Hawkins Dynamic. And Drake just did a great job writing the manuscript. So it took a while, and it was very thorough in how we collected the data and did the study. But I think Drake's actually going to do his PhD with a lot of these studies. So it's just it was a great project, but it all stemmed from those Thursday morning innovation meetings that we did with Hawkins Dynamic, because we really wanted to be cutting edge and forward thinking. And kudos to Drake and kudos to Carabelle, because Cara literally just packed up the force plates in her car, drove to all these sites, and just collected the data. So it was really awesome, unique study, and that's one of what will probably end up being 3 or 4 papers that we're gonna publish together.
Nice, nice, nice. So we got 2 or 3 more papers looking in the future.
So I think that was counter movement. We'll probably do counter movement rebound. We'll probably look at are some of your top performers on the force plate also top performers in games. So I think there's a lot of different studies and a lot of different things we can look at. But I think the first one was just kind of a proof of concept, like what's normative for elite level college basketball? What's the distribution amongst multiple teams? So I think that just was published in the International Journal of Strength and Conditioning. I think it's publicly available as of yesterday.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
really cool if you get a chance. It's all accessible and publicly available online, and at the International Journal of Strength and Conditioning website. So check it out if you get a chance.
Cool, cool. So, that's basically all I have for you guys. Jeff, like, uh, the first time I had you on my podcast, I was like, man, this guy's like need to talk a little bit more. He talked too less, but I like this one. I like this one. And I'm super grateful to be able to learn from you. So, uh, for those who are interested in what we're talking about today, where can they find you?
Find me.
Yep.
Los Angeles, but they can email me off the website. Um, I feel like I live half the time in Eugene, Oregon, with always being there with the Olympic trials and the NCAA championships. But yeah, email me Peters me at usc.edu. Follow me on the gram, on the Instagram at coach_Petersmeyer. Or if you want a million pizza pictures, then that's my personal Instagram, Hurdles52. But about
Cool,
all I post.
cool. Adam, like, uh, where can they find you on like, where can they find you and like talk about like those paper biomechanic
Yeah.
programming?
So Instagram is just Adam Petway. Feel free to email me anytime. It's just my name at adampetway@gmail.com. I will get back with you. And then really, ResearchGate is something that we're really going to try to come out with a lot of publications in the next, half year and a half. So we got a lot of really good work on, epidemiology in the NBA as it deals with like, subsequent new injuries in ACLs and Achilles tendon ruptures. We're going to model out, Achilles tendon ruptures and ACLs in different sports, European football or soccer, elite women's basketball, American football. So yeah, try to keep up on ResearchGate, or if there's any questions that pop up, just feel free to reach out on Instagram or on, my Gmail, which is just my name, Adam Petway at gmail.com.
Nice.